Good evening, everybody. Welcome once again to the Lepanto Institute's Anchor Team. I'm your host, Michael Hitchborn, and in a moment, I'm going to play for you a pre-recorded interview that I did with Dr. Bill Donohue on his new book, Christianity in the Crosshairs. Now, during the interview, Dr. Donohue and I discuss organizations operating within the church that have worked against the church's moral teachings, like the CCHD. And given this, I thought it would be appropriate to follow this short interview with a discussion on my third installment in the series titled Catholic Relief Services, A History of Lies and Cover-Ups. And before we get into any of that, let's begin, as we always do, with a prayer. In nomine Patris, et Filii, et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum. Benedicta tu in mulieribus, et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus. Sancta Maria Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostrae. Amen. Our Lady of Victory, pray for us. In nomine Patris, et Filii, et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. And now, the interview with Dr. Bill Donohue. I have with me now our very special guest, Bill Donohue, who is the president of the Catholic League, and he just wrote this book, Christianity in the Crosshairs, Ruling Class and Radicals Find a Common Enemy. Bill, welcome to the program. Thank you so much for being with us.
Well, thank you for having me.
This book is very interesting. It really it dives into a multi-layered analysis of what is happening in our society and where the Catholic Church kind of sits. As I was reading through it, I was kind of reminded of the bark of Peter on the Sea of Galilee as it's being buffeted from all sides, the wind and the waves, and the apostles were appalled. They were afraid that they were going to sink into the waters and die. And they said, "Lord, save us, we die." And our Lord got up. He was asleep at the bow of the ship, and he said, "Oh, ye of little faith." And then he commanded the weather to shut up effectively, and everything calmed down. And I was thinking, okay, the wind and the waves and everything else, the crashing of the ship, it's like the waters of the world buffeting the Catholic Church and hitting us from all sides, making it look like everything's going to fall apart. But as you read through the book, you can see who the players are and how they're buffeting the ship, the bark of the church. So why don't you walk us through a little bit right here in the opening about, who are those players? Who are the wind and the waves attacking the church?
Well, first of all, I think it's a very apt metaphor. You packed a lot in there. Our country, our boat has been, I wouldn't say it's sinking, but it's certainly been hit with the waves to rock us. And obviously, the Catholic Church is the one institution that has the answers. I think some of our leaders are not vigorous enough. But basically, what I'm trying to say in the book is this. It used to be in the past that the radicals and the ruling class were opposite. You would have the lord and the peasant, you'd have the working class and the capitalist and so forth. But in more recent decades, you've seen a conflation. Not all, but many in the elite classes, the ones who are the decision makers. Okay, I'm talking about the ruling class. I mean the decision makers in government, in business, in education, the arts, the entertainment industry, the media. These are the major decision makers. They craft the ideas in our society, and they have now accepted, for the most part, the agenda and the thinking of radical activists and intellectuals. Now, these pernicious radical ideas always begin in the academy. I spent many years as a professor, a lot of good professors whom I think we have in this country. Unfortunately, too many of them are dysfunctional. Too many of them are angry at America. They're angry at Western civilization. Most importantly, they're angry at God. In fact, most of them don't even believe in God. It's the sin of pride that we talk about in the Catholic Church. They know better than us. They don't need God. And the problem with the ruling class is very much like the Marxists who thought, well, we're going to reshape human nature. They believed falsely that human nature is not fixed. Of course it's fixed. You can't change human nature. It doesn't change. But they thought we can do that. We change the environment. We change human nature. We can change the people. And under the ultimate communist society, you won't even have a police force. Everybody gets along just, lovey-dovey. Of course, that's all a myth, and that, in fact, it just leads to bloodshed, because once you put that much power in the hands of a few, look out. Now, the ruling class, they're not that way. They don't resort to violence. You're talking about people in Silicon Valley, Wall Street, the federal government under the Biden administration in particular, and some of the deep state people. They are more engaged in what's called soft totalitarianism. Tocqueville called it democratic despotism. C.S. Lewis said, be careful of the quiet men in the suits. Be careful of them. But the person I focused the most, really, in terms of in a capsule summary, is this fellow by the name of Bill Ivey, who back in 2016, when Hillary Clinton was running for president, he said, our goal is to the creation of a compliant citizenry. Compliant citizenry. Think about that. Why would the ruling class want us to be compliant? Well, Orwell understood this. Huxley understood it. John Paul II understood it. He called it soft totalitarianism. Even Pope Francis talked about polite persecution. The whole idea is they want a docile, passive, compliant masses so that they can just do exactly what the ruling class wants them to do. And in their way to achieving their objective are where the people lay anchor, which is in your family and your God, which means Christianity for the most part in the United States. They want to disable the family, the ruling class, and they want to disable the religion, Christianity. If they can do that, they hope that the average guy, the average Joe, as I call him, is now in lurch, looking for communion, a sense of community with the only thing left, which is the ruling class. That's basically, in a quick summary, what I'm trying to get at. And of course, the rest of the book is to give the evidence of it.
Sure. So the interesting thing here, as they say, politics makes for strange bedfellows. You have the ruling class that you talk about and how they're typically not in line with the radicals, the rabble rousers at the bottom levels. But there is a very strange connection between these major industrialists and Marxist revolutionaries around the world. You've got, the Tides Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, the Ford Foundation, the Carnegie Foundation. They have a long history of financing radical groups, primarily hard leftist Marxist groups as in society. And it seems like it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Why would a capitalist align with a Marxist? Because the Marxists want to take the money from the capitalists and have it for themselves, whereas the capitalists ostensibly want to have the money so that they can live a life of luxury and all that kind of stuff. So why would they be working with them? How does this make sense?
It's interesting. Back in 1976, Henry Ford II quit the Ford Foundation. He said, my father was a capitalist. That's what he did. He did great work in this country. But the foundation now is taken over by these elites, and they are working for more socialist kinds of agendas, and I can't get them to change, so I quit. I think a lot of it has to do with, just take a look at the Marxists. What the Marxists wanted was a messianic understanding of reshaping human nature and reshaping society. The ruling class believes, for one, that you can have all the taxation you want. It'll never get to us because they are that filthy rich, and to use their own kind of language, that it'll never get to the point where we're going to have a confiscatory taxation. So they feel comfortable enough. They may not believe that they want to change human nature, but they do want a docile citizenry. They do want the people to agree what they want. You take a look at the World Economic Forum. They're very clear about what they want. It's very similar to what Bill Ivey was saying to Hillary Clinton. And so I think what's driving it is if your goal is control, and that's what it is, thought control, behavioral control. If your goal is control, then clearly you will adopt a lot of the same ideas of the Marxists because the family and religion are the problem. They're the obstacle for you to have the kind of control that you want. It's strange. If ideologically speaking alone, it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. You have to look at the totality of this and the fact that these people are so far aloof from society. They live in their own bubble. They live in gated communities. They have their own private security. They're untouched by the consequences of their ideas. And I want to stress that. If you are untouched by the consequences of your own ideas, then yes, you can continue down the road milly-nilly. They don't care. they have their kids in the best schools, and they deny school choice to African Americans and Hispanics because they really don't care about African Americans and Hispanics. I wish more African Americans and Hispanics could figure that out. But I think it's all about control.
So, in other words,
it's control.
Yeah, well, so what we're looking at then is that these elites, the ones who have all the finances and the wealth, they're giving money to these Marxist organizations with the idea that they can control the mob, so to speak, that the mob will act as their foot soldiers to get things done so that they can have that docile citizenry. And of course, the Marxists think, well, we're going to be marching for our own ideals and our own ideologies, but at the end of the day, they are controlled opposition, which is a very interesting idea. I want to read to you, one of the things that you talk about in your book is you talk about Saul Alinsky quite a bit, the radicals, rules for radicals, and the rabble rousers at the bottom. And I want to read to you a portion of an op-ed that was written in the El Paso Times in 1982. And this was an op-ed that was written about the Industrial Areas Foundation. And what he says, he talks about membership in APIZO, which is one of the affiliates of the Industrial Areas Foundation, talks about APIZO having 25 Catholic churches that were members of this group. And he says this, he said, APIZO is a creation of a few radical clergy and nuns who espouse a new social gospel facetiously named that they are as Marxist as Jesus Christ and claim that they are committed to a free and open society based on the principles of American democracy. They distort the gospel with political overtones, adhere to the Marxist ideas and methods and deceits of Alinsky, and make a mockery of American democratic principles by denying the faithful and the most basic rights and taking the donations for illicit purposes when they are given in good faith. It is time for all Catholics to stand up and say enough. It is time for Catholics to demand that those 15 priest leaders of APIZO who signed the press statement stop this foolishness and restore common sense to the church. So the thing is, APIZO was actually it was being financed through the Campaign for Human Development, and it, of course, being a part of Alinsky's Industrial Areas Foundation, has a very Marxist ideology. So you do talk about Marxist infiltration into the church and all that kind of stuff. So if you could kind of speak to this just a little bit about the radicals that are being used within the church through the campaign to support Alinsky and his community organizing groups. If you talk to that a little bit.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned, Michael, the Campaign for Human Development. It's been a corrupt institution going back to the 1970s. There was a Monsignor Egan in the Archdiocese of Chicago who was operative working with Alinsky. And of course, let's face it, Obama was big into the community organizing himself a little bit later. But this is the same time in the 1970s when the church is in disarray with the fallout of Vatican II, not knowing how to handle it. And you had these people like this Monsignor Egan and others using basically this social gospel, as they would put it. At the same time was liberation theology in the 80s in Latin America. It all comes together. It's cultural Marxism is what it is. And they were more committed to the Marxist agenda, certainly, than they were the gospel as we understand it as Catholics. And this is the same time that call to action was very big. In other words, these are dissident Catholics. These are not loyal men and women of the church. These are people who have their own political agenda. They would subvert the Catholic Church if it meant that they could win anyway. And Chicago was a hotbed of it. In fact, the Midwest, interestingly, was a hotbed of all of this. Remember the National Catholic Reporter, which is a rogue anti-Catholic publication. They were founded in Kansas back in the 1960s. So you have a lot of these people, dissident Catholics, many of them ex-nuns and priests, by the way. Yeah. The people who were operative in forming Catholics for a Free Choice. Francis Kissling was a nun. The guy who founded it, what used to be a Jesuit. A lot of these people are alienated, angry, deracinated Catholics. Their life didn't work out for them. They made the wrong mistake. Instead of moving on, they want to tear down the church. They're like the termites within. And there's been a lot written about that. And I myself have gone to top members of the Catholic Church, without mentioning them, cardinals, and said, listen, why are we still making money for the Campaign for Human Development, they're all pro-abortion. They're using the money. Money's fungible. They're doing what they want with it. And some of them have tried to reform it. You can't reform an organization that is that rotten from the top to the bottom, which is why I give to the Catholic Church, of course, every Sunday. When they come around with that envelope, I put it in the garbage.
Yep. I really appreciate hearing you say that. I've been doing research into the CCHD for, since 2010. And we've put out massive reports on their grantees every year, trying to get the bishops to change things. And hopefully, with the departure of Ralph McLeod a couple of years ago, we'll see some real changes and perhaps even a shift away from the CCHD, as I think it was Bishop Conley, or maybe it was Archbishop Naumann that suggested that. I think it was Springfield, Paprocki, who suggested that they actually take up the collection rather for Catholic education as opposed to these social justice organizations. Hopefully we'll see a change. I think that there is a shift in Catholic perception regarding this group. So I think that's a good thing. And I'm glad that you're actually working to try and push in that direction. That's a great thing.
Well, Michael, and I know you know, because I've seen some of your good work. Unfortunately, many, I'm not saying all, but too many Catholics in the social justice wing of the Catholic Church. I mean, I know it's an oversimplification. You get the pro-life Catholic social justice, but there's some measure of truth to it. Having said that, unfortunately, a lot of these social justice people are not only looking to the state as opposed to voluntary associations to help the poor. Many of them are actually on the wrong side on the abortion issue. Yeah. And I'm not saying that they're pro-abortion per se, but they do not regard abortion as, quote, intrinsically evil. Right. I've debated this with liberal priests on television. I believe that racism is intrinsically evil. I believe that abortion is intrinsically evil. I'm consistent with the teachings of the Catholic Church. They don't believe that abortion is intrinsically evil. They do believe that racism is intrinsically evil. So they split the difference. And that's where the problem is. Too many in the social justice wing, I'm talking here now more or less the more extreme members, they basically have accepted the Marxist agenda 100%. And there are not too many Christian roots left in these people.
No, you're absolutely right. One of the things that I really enjoyed going through in your book was the discussion on the communist infiltration into the Catholic Church. You talk about Alice von Hildebrand and how Bella Dodd had told her about 1,100 communist radicals that she had helped join the seminaries. She talked about working with cardinals in the Vatican that were communist radicals. One of and you also talk about the World Economic Forum as kind of a Marxist entity that's they're using the Marxist foot soldiers at the bottom to achieve their ends. Have you ever heard of the World Social Forum?
World Social Forum. I'm not certain I have.
So the World Social Forum was formed in 2001 as an answer to the World Economic Forum. So they're supposed to be opposing forces. What's interesting is that the World Social Forum has the same end as the World Economic Forum. As Sun Tzu talks about, you create two apparently diametrically opposing forces, but you use them as a pincher move to get the guys in the middle. So when you're talking about the overall the average Joe, you talk about the average Joe a lot in your book, and how the Catholic Church, they're kind of at the crosshairs of these two seemingly opposing forces that actually are in league with each other. The World Social Forum is a communist organization. It was formed by the communist parties of Brazil in league with, unfortunately, the Catholic University of Sao Paulo. And it has a lot of Catholic organizations that are members of the World Social Forum. Catholic Relief Services was participant. Caritas Internationalis is actually on the international steering committee of the World Social Forum. And when we go through, we've got photos of them marching through the streets with hammer and sickle flags. They've got they're all pro-abortion. They've got they've got forums that they hold in these meetings that they have, and they're all pushing Marxism, abortion, LGBT ideologies. So it seems very much that in a lot of these charitable organizations, we're seeing that real infiltration and that operation within the Catholic Church. Do you think that maybe the transposition of charity into an industry is a part of this attack on the Catholic Church and on the faithful?
Well, it is. I mean, you just think of all these organizations that are dependent on sugar daddies or particularly foundations. And you mentioned some of them before. I go through a whole lot of them myself. You know, if it's on the left, Tides funds it. You know, the Rockefeller brothers and Ford Foundation and the Hewlett Foundation and Buffett Foundation. You go right down the list of them. So yeah, that's part of the problem. They don't want to do what Mother Teresa did. I mean, that's the model for all of us. Now, I live in the real world, Michael. I don't expect that everyone's going to go out there and create hospices and deal with the needy. But people have jobs to do, and I get it. And Mother Teresa herself understood that there's a role for the welfare state. But remember what she said to Margaret Thatcher, who's a good woman, and she was bragging about the welfare state and how much they were helping the needy. She said, yes, but can you give them love? Can you give them love? I've tracked it and others in this country. You take a look at the social justice people, overwhelmingly liberal Democrat, postgraduate degrees. These are people who, in terms of their own charitable giving, is next to nothing. Take a look at, just compare charitable giving per capita. Take two states, Mississippi and Massachusetts. Massachusetts is home to the greatest stellar liberals in America. They give practically nothing compared to per capita to what the people in Mississippi do, who are God-fearing people, church-going people. And there's a reason for this. The social justice people don't believe that they should have any skin in the game. That's for the government. The government has to take care of people. And they don't have to give. They don't give blood. It's the conservatives who give the blood. And it's really striking to me how greedy liberals are, who claim that they have an interest in the poor. They work against charter schools. They work against school choice. They don't believe in voluntarism. They believe that the state should eclipse everything. They're cultural Marxist. They have almost nothing in common with me and you, and I think the average Catholic in the pew who actually paid the bills. And yet they pretend that they're concerned about the poor. It goes back to Karl Marx. He exploited his own children, got an advance on his inheritance. His kids committed suicide. He impregnated his maid, Lenchen, that was her nickname. And then on his deathbed, Engels admitted that baby Freddie was mine. It was yours. We know it was yours, Carl, but I took paternity rights because we didn't ruin your reputation. Rousseau did the same thing. 5 illegitimate kids. I mean, I could go on and on. The phoniness of these people on the left claiming they have the best interests of the poor involved, they put their heels into the face of the poor with their policies, at least, every time they get a chance.
You know, it's fascinating to me, and my wife and I have talked about this a number of times. When you look at these radical leftists, what are they hoping to achieve? What are they hoping to gain? You know, with the rise through the ranks, radicals at the bottom, what are they doing? They're marching for an ideal, and a lot of times they'll put their own lives on the line for the ideal and hoping that they'll achieve the ideal, whatever that is. And then you've got these overlords who are kind of controlling them and directing them to attain some sort of world governance. But then what? I mean, you have these super wealthy people. They control all of this stuff. They have all this money, all the wealth, all the comforts. What could they possibly hope to gain? Why are they doing this?
Well, the Marxists, and they've changed a bit, so I'll talk about what they've changed to and why. But the Marxists obviously believed in utopia, which literally translated means nowhere. But they believed in a utopia where everyone will come together, and the communists. First, you'll have socialism. After capitalism crashes, the working class will lead it, because the working class are Trump people, but they got everything wrong. Who cares? Then after socialism comes communism, and that's when you get nirvana, and that's when you have peace on earth, and everybody gets along just well. They know it doesn't work. All right. They know it. They saw what happened in the Soviet Union. They saw what happened under Pol Pot. They saw what happened under Mao. It's never worked anywhere. The latest example, of course, is Venezuela, and then, of course, Cuba. So what have they done? Have they given up altogether and say, maybe capitalism, for all of its flaws, is still a better system? No. Since they, at least Marx, you got to give him credit for one thing. He was wrong about human nature. And if you get that wrong, you get everything wrong. But if Marx did sincerely believe that he had a blueprint for the creation of the good society, Now, it was totally flawed blueprint because he didn't understand human nature, but he did want to make things better. The Marxists today, and this has been true about maybe the last, I'd say, 20 years, they themselves now have given up on Marxism as it's understood by their progenitor, by Karl Marx, because they know it doesn't work. Instead of saying, well, free enterprise maybe is a decent alternative, they become nihilist. They're like the little boy who can't put together the erector set, so he takes the hammer and he smashes it. They're out to annihilate our society. They know that they can't look to some other society as a beacon of hope. They know that the Scandinavian countries, they're not communists, they're welfare state people. Every place where communism has been tried, it's failed. But instead of giving up, they just want to tear it down. And that's what they're doing now. What is Antifa but out there to destroy? They have no idea, no vision, and even the liberals who are fair-minded, who have written about it, understand they don't have a vision of the good society. They're just exasperated. They're intellectually exhausted. And the only thing left is to tear things down. That's what makes them happy.
Wow. You know, it's really kind of a sad commentary that the only thing that makes people happy is destruction. And of course, with the elitists, they look at the society, they want to control it. They want to create this world government kind of system. It seems to me that there's some sort of demonic element behind it too, that they serve a higher master in that regard.
Well, look at I quote him in the book, the great genius Harari, the guy for the World Economic Forum. He poses the question, what are we going to do with all the useless people? What do you mean useless people? No Catholic would certainly speak that way. There are no such thing as a useless person. The useless people are the rubble. You know, Marx referred to he had a term for them, the Lupin proletariat, meaning the scum of the earth. In other words, you can't make a revolution off the backs of the homeless and the drunkards and the prostitutes and people like that. They're just a bunch of bums. You got to work with the working class. You have to weaponize the blue collar people. These people speak with disdain about those at the bottom. Margaret Sanger wasn't just a happy racist. She spoke about the weeds in the Negro population. We have to get rid of them. We have to eliminate them. They always, I mean, I've worked with the poor. I've worked in Spanish Harlem. I've worked with wonderful Black and Puerto Rican kids and their parents, but basically the mothers. And I saw the great good that the Catholic schools can do in the ghetto. And I understand the love that a lot of Catholic men and women have who work in these Catholic schools, terribly underpaid. And then I look at these people who claim to be on their side. They're not on their side. They stand in the way of every kind of school choice initiative that anyone's ever proposed.
I know you have a hard break or a hard leave here in just a few moments, but we are talking about Christianity in the Crosshairs, Bill Donohue's new book, The Ruling Class and Radicals Find a Common Enemy. In these final moments of the show, why don't you tell us, what's the solution? How do we fight against this? You know, you've got the wealthy elites on one side, you've got the radicals on the other. They're trying to destroy the family. They're trying to destroy our faith. How do we fight this? And how do we maintain the integrity of our families in this just unrelenting onslaught against us?
One of the things I've come to the conclusion of, and this is not a total answer by any reason, Michael, but I think too many Americans, they listen to someone on the radio, on TV, and they've got alphabets after their name, and they think that they're an expert and whatnot. I don't mean to denigrate all of them, but I'm simply saying this. When the American people hear something that strikes them in the gut as simply wrong, as bizarre, such as a boy can become a girl can become a boy, we all know that's not true. Men can become pregnant. No, we don't. We need to put these people in the asylums where they belong. People need to trust their own gut, because the elites, too many of them, are not interested in their own welfare. They're interested in winning. Winning to them means control. That's why they want the compliant citizenry. But they can't do it without disabling the family or religion. So you've got to protect, for example, the idea of parental rights. It's under assault. I have a whole chapter in the book about whose children are they. People in government, with the Biden administration, certainly believe this, but it's in the National Education Association. They don't believe that parents have first dibs on their kids. The children belong to all of us. Be careful when you hear that kind of collectivist mentality. That means that they have a right to take your kids from them. Also, the same thing with religion. If your fidelity is to your God, and if you're a Christian, It's to Christ. And if you're a Catholic, to the magisterium, to the Catholic Church, then you have to understand these people in the World Economic Forum and the radicals who teach in the Ivy League schools and the people with the postgraduate degrees, they're thoroughly secularized, and they're also deracinated. They have no roots. They look at you as a problem. They want to disable religion and the family from the average Joe, so they'll leave them in lurch, and so that they'll take all the directives from them. People have to trust their own gut, and we've seen too many examples where you have elites who are simply gone off the bat.
Bill, thank you so much for being on the program. Once again, Christianity in the Crosshairs, Ruling Class and Radicals Find a Common Enemy. Where can people find a copy of the book?
It's published by Tan Books in North Carolina. It's sold out right now. I'm glad to say, in one sense, on Amazon, but they're getting more copies. And now the Kindle and the audiobook are spiking. It's doing very well. It's number one under new releases and doing well within its category of religious intolerance and persecution. You can get it from Barnes & Noble. You can get it from Target. It's widely available.
All right. Thank you so much for being on the program this evening. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you for your ministry.
All right. Lots to unpack there. Now, as we discussed, there are entities that have infiltrated the Catholic Church to pervert her charitable works, converting them into an instrument of global socialism. Now, what I'm going to show you here is a little bit of behind the news, the story behind the story regarding Catholic Relief Services. Now, we published this report just earlier last week, but I'm going to go through it because the information, I think, is still relevant and very, very important. The initial report that we'll be going over, which is about a project that CRS was involved with called Access, Project Access, spelled AXXES. We published this report 10 years ago, but it's still very much relevant because of the cover-up that was engaged in by Catholic Relief Services prior to and after the publication of our report. And the thing is, this cover-up is so clear and so damning that it strikes as it stands as a very striking example of CRS's willingness to deceive both the faithful and the bishops about what they're actually doing. So let's start. Let me show you the report that we will be. Oh, here we go. I'll put this up here. So this is the report that I'm going to be going over. You can go to it. You can find it on our website, lepantoin.org. I've got screenshots of all the relative information, but rather than going through this report, what I'm going to do is walk you through the situation, and I'll give you, we'll actually open up the documents that I'm referencing in this particular report. So let's go to the very first summary that we have here. Project Access. Okay, CRS was a sub-grantee on Project Access, and its primary purpose, or one of its primary purposes anyway, was the integration of access to and the use of abortifacient contraceptives as a part of primary healthcare interventions there in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And this first document I'm going to refer to, this came from the official Project Access website. So this first document is titled Access Program Description. So let me pull that up. Let's see. We will discard this and let me put in share screen. Whoops, there we go. Access Program Description. So here we go. This is the Access Program Description. Let me make it bigger for you so that you can see it better. And let's embiggen this. Okay. So again, this is the official description of the project. This was published in, I think it was published in 2006, just before the official start of Project Access. And it provides a very clear description of what the project intends. Coming up on this first page, let me scroll down here. Okay. So project objective, okay. And then project results. This is what it's going to do. It says project results will be achieved through three main project components. And component A is increased access to integrated primary healthcare interventions. And that's produced right here front and center on the first page. And it says this component will address a minimum package of services composed of 8 technical areas. And the first one is child spacing and reproductive health. So then very helpfully, they put that particular portion right here. And they said the activities will focus on increased contraceptive security, promote and provide a mix of contraceptive methods, including natural or modern, pills, IUDs, condoms, etc., promote birth spacing rather than limited births, and ensure that all outreach messages incorporate and involve men. So then it also talks about integrating family planning services and all that kind of stuff into, such as incorporating family planning services into PMTCT, which is the prevention of mother to child transmission of HIV, and VCT programs, and I forget what that stands for, vulnerable children I can't remember. Anyway, and that basically they want to incorporate family planning services into all of those kinds of things. So this is right there at the very beginning in the project description. When Catholic Relief Services agreed to be a part of this program, this would have been made very clear to them that the objectives involved included the promotion of contraception among the people. Now, Catholic Relief Services was operating in this one area of the Democratic Republic called South Kivu or Sud Kivu. And in this area, they were the primary operators. There wasn't anybody else operating there. So the people of Sud Kivu or South Kivu in the Democratic Republic of Congo knew about Catholic Relief Services. They went to them for their health programs. They went to them for their health care in the hospitals and the clinics, etc. And CRS then agreed to be a part of this program. And when they did that, they then opened up the area for which they had been operating, all the people that they'd been working for there. They opened all of that up to the entire program called Project Access. What that did was open the floodgates for those contraceptive services to be provided to the area that CRS was responsible for. They opened the gate. That was their agreement. It had to be, because CRS couldn't participate in this project without agreeing to allow this to happen. Okay, so that was the program description. But more to the point, what we have is CRS in both a newsletter and in a video admitting to knowledge of this. This comes from 2010. This is a newsletter from 2010. Let me open it up. This is a USAID newsletter from 2010. Here's the letter, okay? And you can see right here at the very front, USAID, from the people, front lines. It's their newsletter, okay? They're simply reporting on the projects that they're involved with. And in one area, they're talking about Project Access. And here we go. So this is the title, Cycle of Conflict Challenges Progress in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And they talk about Project Access. Here's the part that I think that you really need to see. Okay, so here we go. Focus on Democratic Republic of the Congo. Hospital deliveries improve maternal and infant health. So all of this newsletter is focused on Project Access. Look at this. So here's a picture. A Congolese mother gazes proudly at the newborn she delivered without complications at the Kaziba General Hospital in Kaziba, South Kivu. That's where CRS is operating. Okay, that's why this is important. USAID supports Project Access in this region of the Democratic Republic of the Congo in an effort to improve maternal and child health. Okay, with that in mind, look at this. This portion right here. Figures for access to prenatal care, assisted deliveries, and use of contraceptives all show improvement over the last year, said Dr. Janvier, and I'm not going to pronounce the last name, the Access Medical Coordinator with implementing partner Catholic Relief Services. Okay. Dr. Janvier is the medical coordinator for Catholic Relief Services in Project Access. And what did he say? He said figures for access to prenatal care, assisted deliveries, and use of contraceptives all show improvement over the last year. That's the medical coordinator for Catholic Relief Services fully admitting that CRS was admitting and allowing these contraceptives to be distributed in the area in South Kivu where CRS was operating. Okay, it gets even worse because in 2011, CRS was part Dr. Janvier anyway, was let me open up my next link. Here we go. Okay. This is a video of Project Access. And right about at 30 seconds, so it's talking about, well, I'm just going to go ahead and play this portion of the video for you to watch because I think you really need to see, and I'm going to put on closed captioning so that you can see the translations. Make sure the translations are on. Subtitles, auto translate, English, so that you can see the English. There we go. Okay. Just watch this.
Présentement, nous sommes à l'hôpital général de référence de Kaziba. Kaziba qui est une des zones de santé.
I'm going to turn off the subtitles because I forgot that there were subtitles already in it. So, okay.
Des 28 zones de santé appuyées par le projet Access au sud Kivu.
Okay.
Et le projet Access, en fait, comporte 3 volets. Le premier volet qui est le plus grand, c'est le volet qui vise l'amélioration de la qualité et de l'accessibilité aux soins. En fait, c'est le volet, comme je disais, le plus grand qui a en son sein beaucoup plus tous les aspects de la santé maternelle et infantile, tout ce qui est les accouchements assistés, tout ce qui est consultation prénatale, tout ce qui est consultation préscolaire, tout ce qui est le planning familial, tout ce
family planning. So here, the doctor who headed up Catholic Relief Services project of Access in the Democratic Republic of the Congo is showing South Kivu. He's talking, he had already admitted contraception was a part of the program. In fact, it was showing improvements in their dispersion area. Here in that video, he was saying that family planning was exactly what I showed you in that first document, part of the first element of Project Access to contraception. He said family planning, but what we saw, what I showed you right at the beginning, was all the abortifacient contraception that they're providing in that area. Okay. Now, here's something else that's important. We had access, ironically, to a whole bunch of documents produced by this project. Okay. We got their quarterly reports. We got the annexes for their quarterly reports. And what I'm going to show you right here is from the second quarter of year 1. Let me open it up. Share screen. Okay. Second quarter of year 1. And here you can see, and there we go. We can get rid of that. You can see Project Access, USAID. This is an official document. This isn't something I made up. This is an official document. And it came from, okay, Project Access. You've got the agreement number, all of that. All right. So one of the portions of this document is very interesting because they start talking about the distribution of contraception. And they said contraceptives in stock at ECC, PSI, and IRH, those are 3 of the implementing partners, were distributed to the coordination offices and into many of the zones. Okay. Unfortunately, some of the Depo-Provera had spoiled because of poor storage. Depo-Provera is injectable contraception. It's an abortifacient. Anyway, they talked about sending these to coordination offices. Okay. Here's what's very important. Contraceptives in stock here and here and here were distributed to the coordination offices. And what do we see here? South Kivu, CRS. They have a population of 2.03 million people. That's the most out of all of these project areas. They had 8,000 units of Depo-Provera sent to the coordination office. 26,400 units of Ovret, which is it's injectable, the contraceptive pill, 500 IUDs, and 321,000 condoms all went to CRS in South Kivu. And going back to what that doctor had said, okay, you have Dr. Janvier saying, we acknowledge that family planning is a part of this program here in South Kivu. And in that USAID newsletter, he was quoted as saying contraceptives are showing improvement in their area. Okay. This is all very important for establishing what I'm going to show you coming up. But I want to show you this next portion because it's also very instructive to what I'm talking about. And we have many such documents like this. Okay. This also is a USAID official document for Project Access. It's the annexes for year 3, quarter 1. Now, annexes are all the image files that show all the figures. They're the reports, the documentable reports that they reference, but you can't really fit it into an official report. You have to put it into an annex. So they put these in an annex. Okay, and you can see with these implementing partners, CRS, ECC, and World Vision. Okay, and they talk about, the project indicators. They've got all the different metrics that they've been using to show all of the different things that they were doing with the project. But then, after a while, what they get into are inventory reports. And let me show you what they have in these inventory reports. Okay. So here we have drug credit utilization. It's not really what I'm interested in. Okay. Annex 5. Let's see. Here we go. Here we get into, okay, material and equipment distribution. Now this is one kind of material, but here we get into the medicines. All right. The medicines that they distributed. And the medicines include, and you can see it sideways, let me make it bigger. Depo-Provera, Lofeminol, which is oral contraceptive, Ovret, DIU, which is the French acronym for IUDs, intrauterine devices, condoms, female condoms. They've also got CCV kits. CCV kits are surgical sterilization kits. Okay. DIU kits. Those are the IUD kits that they use for inserting the IUDs. Okay. All of these are right here in this inventory report. And what we're going to look at, this is all South Kivu. Look at that. South Kivu, South Kivu, South Kivu, da, 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 da. And what does it say down here? We have the numbers distributed to health zones. So these are the numbers of the amount distributed among the health zones, all of these areas for which CRS is responsible. And it says quantity received by CRS. So if we go to the area where it says Depo-Provera, etc., you can see, okay, so we'll just start this on the far left side of the screen. Depo-Provera, this is the same inventory report. Look at this. Depo-Provera. Remember, this is distributed to the zone and this is received. So they received 84,000 units of Depo-Provera and distributed 74,000. Up here, it's Lofeminol and then Ovret, which are oral contraceptives, 55,000 and 44,000 respectively. You have the IUDs, 600. You've got Condoms, 882,000 of them. Female condoms, 11,022 or 220. This is the really sick number over here. The CCV kits, the surgical sterilization kits, 18. How many different zones are there? Let's see. That's all but 3 health zones. You see, they distributed all of these surgical sterilization kits into all of these health zones except this one, and this one. All distributed by, received by CRS. Okay. So that's really, really important to show, because the evidence not only suggests, but proves that Catholic Relief Services opened the gates. They knew what this project was all about. They opened the gates and they allowed for the distribution of contraception, whether they participated in it directly or not. The evidence says that they did it themselves, that they actually received and then distributed contraception. And here's why. Here's why I say that the evidence says that. It's not just because of the inventory reports. The inventory reports are key evidence, but it's not quite the smoking gun. The smoking gun comes here. Let me show you. Share screen. Okay. Here's the smoking gun. This is Project Access's official administrative, financial, and operations procedure manual. All right. Let me get to the portion where they talk about managing inventory. Okay, the relationships, not something we're interested in right now. External relationships, consortium. Okay, human resource, positions and agency. We're getting closer. Here we go. I think it's right around. Let me see. Hold on, I'll just do it this way. It'll be easier. There we go. Physical inventory. Okay, this is on page 19. I was very close. So what we're going to see is how the inventory is conducted. And they say a physical inventory of the equipment and supplies will be done quarterly. Okay, we saw a quarterly inventory report. This is to ensure that all the equipment and supplies accounted for are indeed physically present. So they physically counted all of those different units of contraception. The inventory will be carried out by a team composed, according to their level, of the administrator or manager of the project, the logistician, and another member of the team. In other words, there are 3 people from that team present for the conduction of this inventory report. The administrator or manager, the logistician, and a third member of the team. They're all present for this inventory report. A report duly signed by the members of the inventory team and the manager of the stock must confirm the inventory. Okay, so they are physically confirming the inventory. This should be communicated within a reasonable time to those in charge. The inventory must be based on a codification system to confirm the various levels of the inventory, to establish a standard detailed list of property of the different offices and sites benefiting from the project, to specify the state of the items, and to establish a list of property belonging to a third party and held by Access. Who did that inventory report say received and distributed the contraception? CRS. This list must be signed by the owner and the person responsible for the inventory. This is the most important line, because what it says, this list must be signed by the owner and the person responsible for the inventory. Why is that important? Because what we have are inventory reports indicating that Catholic Relief Services received and distributed 2.25 million units of contraception to the Democratic Republic of the Congo. The reports would have been conducted, those inventory reports would have been conducted by the organization in charge. And what is indicated on those inventory reports is CRS, which means whoever put those inventory reports together saw Catholic Relief Services on those official inventory reports. Okay, so this is important because of the response that we got from CRS. That's going to become very key here. So let me go back to opening the report that I showed you, the one that we put together for this, because in that I have certain letters that you need to see. Let me open this back up. Okay, and share screen. Here we go. All right. So let me do this and make this bigger. Okay. So what happened here is before the publication of our report, let's see, I guess I can't make it any bigger than that here. Let me do this. I'm going to get myself out of the way so that you can see it. Okay. This inventory or this letter came from Archbishop Paul Coakley, who was then the chairman of the Board of Catholic Relief Services. And he wrote this letter on September 29th, 2016. That's important because we didn't publish our report until October the 17th. I had indicated that we would probably be publishing it on October 7th, but we got delayed. There were certain things that came up. I couldn't publish it on the 7th as I had wanted. So we had to wait till the 17th. Regardless, this letter is dated September 29th. And he says, "Your Eminence / Excellency." He's writing to his brother bishops. This letter was never made public. It was never sent out to the faithful. It was sent only to the bishops. I am writing to advise you that Michael Hitchborn, who has frequently launched attacks against various Catholic agencies, including Catholic Relief Services through his organization, the Lepanto Institute, has indicated that he will release another report on CRS on Friday, October 7th. And here he immediately launches into an ad hominem. If Mr. Hitchborn follows form, there will be allegations, new or old. There will have been violations of Catholic teaching in some aspect of CRS overseas programming, along with a request for donations for his quote-unquote institute. And then he says, as you know, CRS has been through this before and is ready with a thorough process for dealing with, and if necessary, responding to this one. So this is kind of a blustery blowing off of our report. And then he says, despite claims that are often startling, a closer examination has shown little substance. Often, they are claims that are nothing more than guilt by tenuous association. This is completely false. Our reports have never, ever, ever fallen into guilt by association. We never engage in guilt by association. We only use direct evidence that comes directly from the sources, and we show that the evidence itself indicates direct participation in something gravely immoral. So there's no guilt by association here, not in this report, not in any of our reports. So he says that there's often little substance. Really? Okay. Well, so he's now poisoning the well. He's trying to poison the well against our report. And he goes on and says, CRS has clear policies, blah, blah, blah. Mr. Hitchborn has made a couple of allegations recently, including insinuating that Carolyn Wu's departure signals some wrongdoing by her or CRS that we know are false. This is false. I never, ever insinuated that Carolyn Wu's departure from CRS indicated wrongdoing on the part of CRS or her. Never said that. There were others that said that, but that wasn't me. So he's conflating my statement with something that was said by somebody else. All I ever did, because I was asked directly about that in a couple of interviews, all I ever did was say, well, the timing is a little interesting. I've never seen any indication that Carolyn Wu or any president of CRS had a term limit. I've never heard of that, especially since Ken Hackett served for far longer than 5 years. I never insinuated that she did anything wrong. I just said that the timing was interesting because it happened right about the time we were getting ready to publish this report. That's it. That's all it was. So anyway, he falsely accused me of falsely accusing her. And then he says, as previously, we expect the upcoming attack also to lack a relationship with the truth. So therefore, he's calling me a liar preemptively. As evidence, and this is the funny part, as evidence, we have already received letters of support, see below, from the Kenyan bishops and the bishops of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, who are aware that Mr. Hitchborn has been digging into CRS's work in their countries. If you receive any inquiries after Mr. Hitchborn's report, we would ask that you reply with expressions of confidence in CRS and assurance that CRS has systems and processes in place to ensure fidelity to Catholic identity and to look into and address any concerns. We are providing below a general statement about CRS's systems to ensure its Catholic identity for you should you receive any inquiries. So again, he's preparing, and this is preemptive. This is before he's even seen the report. He has no idea what's in it. And he's going out there and he's saying, please tell people that we support CRS. Regardless of what Mr. Hitchborn puts forward, just tell people that you support CRS and their systems and processes. That's awful. That's awful. I mean, even if it wasn't just us, let's say that he was talking about somebody else entirely. He was talking about some other report or some other awareness of a systematic problem. And for him to preemptively state, we want you to tell people everything's fine, regardless of what we're being told, regardless of the evidence put forward. This is a preemptive lie. I don't know how I could see it any other way. So anyway, let's take a look at these letters from the bishops' conferences. So I'm going to have to actually put this into a slide because, or actually, hold on, let me do it this way. I'm going to have to make it big this way because you can't quite see it in the article. So I'm going to remove this. Oops, here I am. And let's put it in. No, stop sharing. Stop screen. Okay. Share screen. No, actually, not cancel. Share. Let's go to, here we go. Share that. And let's take a look at what it looks like so that I can see. Okay, good. I'm going to take myself out so that you can see better what I'm seeing. Okay, so here you've got statement from KCCB. That's the Kenyan Conference of Catholic Bishops. And it's dated 27 September 2016. And it says, greetings from Kenya, from Kenya Conference of Catholic Bishops. The Kenya Conference of Bishops stands behind the work of Catholic Relief Services with whom we have partnered for more than 51 years in Kenya. The work of CRS has always been faithful to Catholic teaching and supports the gospel of Jesus Christ. We reiterate our thanks and appreciation to CRS for partnering with KCCB and the Diocesan Caritas to serve the poorest and most vulnerable Kenyans as we carry out the mission of our loving Lord Jesus Christ. These programs have positively impacted thousands of lives. Once more, we thank CRS and look forward to continued support and collaboration. Now, let's go over to the one from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. What does it say? Greetings from, which is the same thing from the other letter, the Conference of the Catholic Bishops in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. The CENCO, meaning the same thing over here, stands behind the work of Catholic Relief Services, with whom we have partnered for more than fill in the blank. This was a fill in the blank letter. It was a form letter provided by CRS to both conferences. The wording is exactly the same. The only thing they did was leave blanks for these two entities, the Bishops' Conference of the Congo and the Bishops' Conference of Kenya, to fill in the blanks and then send the letter back to CRS. We reiterate our thanks and appreciation to CRS for partnering with fill in the blank to serve the poorest and most vulnerable fill in the blank. Together, CRS and CENCO carry out the mission of our loving Lord Jesus Christ. Our partnership and our programs have positively impacted thousands of fill in the blank. Once more, we thank CRS and look forward to continued collaboration and support in fill in the blank. It's the same letter. It's the exact same letter, and it was sent by Catholic Relief to Catholic Relief Services from these two different entities. Well, let me put myself back up here. Okay. CRS has to be the source of the letter. They had to have sent that letter to both Kenya and to the Congolese bishops, basically saying, fill this out and send it back to us. And that's exactly what happened. So here in this particular, not that one, let me remove this. Let me go back to the document here. Okay. Okay, what was it Archbishop Coakley said? As evidence. This is crazy. As evidence, we have already received letters of support, see below, from the Kenyan bishops and the bishops of the DRC, who are aware that Hitchborn has been digging into CRS's work in their countries. I am flabbergasted that anybody actually took any of this seriously after looking at the two letters side by side. How could they then turn around and say that this is evidence against me when CRS was the source of the writing of the letters? All they did was tell them to fill it out and send it back. It gets worse, because then after we published our report on October the 17th, the very same day, remember, CRS did not see this report prior to publication. They didn't have a copy of it. They didn't know what was in it. But the very same day, Archbishop Coakley sends out a letter again to his brother bishops. This was never published on the front end. Nobody ever saw this. It was leaked to me by another bishop. And here's what he said. Today, the Lepanto Institute released its report on CRS activities in the Democratic Republic of the Congo on a project that ran from 2006 to 2010. CRS participated in specific activities that were consistent with Catholic teaching, while other groups, including the primary sponsor, meaning IMA World Health, they were the primary on this group. CRS was a sub-grantee, undertook other activities, including some that involve artificial contraception. So here he's acknowledging that CRS knew that contraception was a part of this project. Unfortunately, in reports prepared by the prime sponsor, IMA World Health, who did not understand how important clarity on CRS's role is, I'll come back to this in a minute, it appears CRS participated in distribution of artificial contraception. So here he's admitting, oh yeah, it kind of looks like that, doesn't it? But remember his preemptive letter where he said, well, it's always lacking substance. His reports lack substance, usually filled with a tenuous connection to some guilt by association. And now he's saying, well, it does look like it. That's what these reports seem to indicate. It does look like CRS participated in distribution of artificial contraception. He said the primary sponsor has confirmed that the report could be misleading and that CRS was very clear we could not participate in distribution of artificial contraception or anything that violated Catholic teaching. The bishops of the Democratic Republic of the Congo have confirmed. Wait a minute. This is a preemptive letter that CRS wrote to the DRC and said, please fill this out and send it back to us. Now he's saying this confirms, it confirms that the work of CRS in their country has been consistent with Catholic teaching. So it's a preemptive letter that they were able to elicit from the bishops of the Democratic Republic of the Congo that they themselves wrote. that the bishops of the Democratic Republic simply filled in the blanks and gave it back to CRS. And now he's using this as proof, as solid proof that, well, CRS's work in their country has been consistent with Catholic teaching. No indication that the the bishops in the Democratic Republic of the Congo had seen our reports, that were made aware of the inventory reports that we were reporting on. Nope, no indication of that. They're just saying we have a letter and this letter stands as proof. But that letter was obtained prior to any of them seeing our reports. This is a bold-faced lie. And then he says, attached is a more complete response to Lepanto Institute. Please feel free to share this report in response to any inquiries you may receive. And then he goes on to complain that he's heard that a number of pastors across the country are refusing to participate in CRS programming, including CRS Rice Bowl, because of these Lepanto reports. That means Michael Hitchborn and his Lepanto Institute are prevailing. The CRS board would greatly appreciate anything you could do to encourage your priests not to accept what Hitchborn is saying. So now he's saying, well, we know these reports really kind of look like we were participating in the distribution of contraception. And yeah, we actually knew that contraception was a part of it, although some other organization was doing that part. And now he's saying, impress upon your priests that they should not accept what Hitchborn is saying. He admitted guilt, and now he's telling other priests, don't accept what Hitchborn's saying. It gets worse, because then when you look at the formal response of Catholic Relief Services, and this also went out on their website, it went out as a formal statement regarding this whole situation. It starts off with a blogger. So now we've gotten to going away from, calling my organization what it is. They just title it known as the Lepanto Institute. A blogger did this, a blogger did that. Well, no, we're an organization. We have a staff. We have several people working for us. This is not a one-man show. I have had, very early on, I was a one-man show, but not for very long. I actually had a couple of people working for me by this time. But he says a blogger known as the Lepanto Institute has once more published a report critical of CRS. And then it talks about the report and how long it is, etc. It says the blogger's evidence for this accusation is the project reports, which are publicly available online. They do seem to show CRS as receiving contraceptives. However, this is an error. Oh, again, another clerical error on the part of some other organization, kind of like the other clerical errors that keep showing up whenever we find CRS involved in something wrong. This is an error that emanates from unclear wording in a report prepared by another organization. And here's the fascinating thing, that did not understand how important absolute clarity on this point is to CRS. More on that in a second. It talks about Project Access and what it's doing and the organizations involved. And it says the contraceptives in question were delivered to the geographic area where CRS was worked, but it was IMA World Health who, quote, provided an alternative mechanism for the training, storage, and distribution of contraceptive products. So here, CRS fully admits that the geographic area where CRS was working did indeed have those contraceptives delivered throughout it. And CRS was the primary in that area. It was the only operator in that area. Those contraceptives would never have reached those people had it not been for CRS. How do I know? Because I have a statement from one of CRS's or one of the project reports that says this. Let me get to it. Where is that portion? Here it is. So this comes from the year 3, quarter 1 report. Okay. They're talking about couple years of protection, which is a metric that they use for determining how many contraceptives are being used in a particular area. So they're talking about an increase in the couple of years of protection for South Kivu. And it says the change is most significant in many health zones in South Kivu, where the areas were which are the areas where the family planning activities were not carried out previously. In those areas, Access is the first partner to develop family planning programs. The first. Access is the first partner to develop family planning programs. So going down here where CRS admits, they fully admit that the contraceptives were distributed among CRS's project area, this proves it was because of CRS's participation in the project that the contraceptives were delivered to the people of the Democratic Republic of the Congo in South Kivu. CRS is directly responsible for that. Regardless of whether they got their hands dirty with the contraception or not, they were the ones who introduced it to those people because of their participation in this project. And then it gets even worse because they started to cite this letter from Richard Santos, the president of IMA World Health. And we have a copy of his letter. In a letter on this matter provided to CRS on October the 5th. So 2 days, well, actually it was about 12 days prior to the publication of our report. So they've somehow figured out what this report was on, because I did talk to several people when I was in Kenya about this report. I talked to them about it. So somehow it got back to CRS what it was we were looking into specifically. On October the 5th, so they went to the president of IMA World Health on October the 5th. They got from him a letter, and he said, it is plausible that the reports are unclear to an outside person who may read a project report that has CRS responsible zones listed as CRS having received all of the services in those areas. However, this is a simplistic view and does not represent reality. In reality, CRS was very clear with all parties that it would not engage in any activities that were contrary to Catholic teaching, and that it would not promote such activities to its local Catholic partners. The caveat Catholic partners is very interesting. But what else is interesting about this letter is that CRS said, a simple query to CRS would have provided clarification of the report, but the blogger didn't approach CRS with his concerns. CRS has been very clear with this blogger over the years that we welcome constructive dialogue about our work. You know what? Let me tell you what happened previously when I would provide CRS with information. They would then operate behind the scenes to try and preemptively strike any evidence that I had already collected against CRS so that they could have a canned response that says, oh, yeah, we can see why you would think that, but it was a mistake. In 2014, Steve Mosier and I put together a report on a project that CRS had conducted in Kenya called SAIDIA, S-A-I-D-I-A. And we found all sorts of program materials showing that CRS was directly promoting the use of condoms and contraception to young people. And we have screenshots of all of that. What CRS didn't know, because I went to CRS first. I went to Archbishop Coakley directly, and I hadn't handed him a bunch of material. And this was only stuff that we collected off of official project reports coming from PEPFAR and USAID. And I said, we have this information. It's actually very concerning, showing that CRS was promoting condoms and contraception to young people. And then, without telling him, I didn't tell him this part, Steve Mosier and I sent an investigator on the ground in Kenya where he collected materials by hand, went into the various project areas, got photographs. He even interviewed children that went through the program in CRS's project area. And we 1000% confirmed that CRS did indeed promote contraception in Project SAIDIA. And you know what they did? They went to PEPFAR and they told PEPFAR, oh, your report indicates that we're promoting this program and that through that program, we're promoting condoms. So we need you to take that out. And they did. PEPFAR struck it from the record. They took it right out of the public record and re-uploaded the project report with glaring omissions where I had previously found in their project reports that CRS did indeed promote those programs with the condom components. And you know what else? CRS's project partners on their own websites had said, we're implementing this program through this project, which is conducted by CRS, and it includes the promotion of condoms and contraception. So even their program partners were saying they implemented it, they're participating in this, and it includes condoms and contraception. CRS had that formally stricken from PEPFAR. So forgive me for not coming to CRS first and giving them an opportunity to find some way of striking the public record, which is exactly what they would have done. And it's very clear that that would have been their intention because of the preemptive strike that they put forth by collecting those letters from the Kenyan bishops and the Congolese bishops ahead of time. Let's go back. Whoops, come on, add to stage. All right. Now, here's the letter from IMA World Health. Here's what's interesting. October the 5th, 2016, and this is Richard Santos. He's the president of IMA World Health, the head of Project Access. As the project in question was primed by IMA, his organization, I can personally assure your team and the board that CRS was not engaged in activities related to the distribution or management of modern contraception under Project Access. CRS was very clear with IMA, USAID, and our partners from the beginning of the project that it would not promote any such activities that were not aligned with Catholic teaching. Hold on. You said that CRS was very clear with IMA, USAID, and your partners. Very clear that CRS would not participate. But, what was it that Archbishop Coakley said? He said, that unfortunately reports prepared by the prime sponsor who did not understand how important clarity on CRS's role is. Wait, you just said they didn't understand, but the president of IMA World Health just said CRS was very clear with us and USAID and our partners. Which is it? Which is it? Were they clear or were they not clear? Did they understand or did they not understand? But here's another question. He says, as the project in question was primed by IMA, I can personally assure your leadership team. I can personally assure. Can you? Because the project ended in 2010. Ended in 2010. He didn't become president and CEO of IMA World Health until October of 2009. At the very end of the project. How could he know? How could he know? Really? So it gets even worse because then what we did is we published an open letter to all of the bishops of the United States. Okay. Published this letter and then I sent it out in a press release. And basically, what we were looking for in this letter was very simple. Okay. The purpose of the letter, and I said at the beginning, we're not writing it to defend the report or its findings, but to address the admission CRS made in response to it. And I said, CRS is asking your excellencies and eminences and all the faithful to ignore 4 years worth of inventory and narrative reports that shows CRS intimately involved in the distribution of 2.25 million units of millions of units of abortifacient contraception and condoms. CRS is asking that the written testimony of the head of IMA World Health suffices as a refutation to the evidence. It should be noted that IMA's current head wasn't even working for IMA while the project in question was being implemented. CRS put forth 2 identical letters, clearly written by CRS from the Bishops' Conferences of Kenya and the Democratic Republic of the Congo to support the assertion that the Lepanto Institute's report is wrong. These letters were obtained weeks before the Lepanto Institute report was even published. More to the point, CRS's response to the report makes 2 stark admissions, showing that it was in fact in proximate material cooperation with the distribution of contraception. One, CRS admitted that it was an implementing partner in the project that distributed abortifacient contraception to health centers and hospitals for which it was responsible. 2, CRS admitted that it implemented a natural family planning program in a project that was using these programs in a way to introduce Congolese women to abortifacient contraception. That was another part of the project. I didn't go into it earlier, but that was definitely very clearly stated. Okay. So then we asked them to implement Pope Benedict XVI's motu proprio on the service of charity, which forbids Catholic charitable organizations from receiving funding from organizations like USAID and PEPFAR, and certainly from participating in projects that are engaged in the promotion of contraception, etc. Okay, so that was the purpose of the letter. That letter, when we sent it out, went out to all of the bishops, and it was happenstance. I didn't realize that the USCCB meeting was taking place at that point, but it went out to all of the bishops during Archbishop or Catholic Relief Services' presentation to the USCCB at the annual assembly. This is what Archbishop Coakley said to all of his brother bishops at the very end of that assembly.
My brother bishops, so thank you for your encouragement, for your support of Carolyn and her outstanding work for CRS during her 5 years of service. And by a kind of bitter irony, even as Carolyn was just speaking, I noticed that an email came to my inbox from the Lepanto Institute with the latest allegations about CRS's work. But I think you're understanding that Catholic Relief Services is a Catholic organization from start to finish. They work on our behalf as the bishops of the United States, and I hope you will not give credence to the relentless insinuations and allegations of this particular blogger. Thank you very much.
Of this blogger. Okay. So go to our website, take a look at the full article that I put together, and you'll want to read parts 1 and 2 because it gives, I'll tell you, after writing these particular articles, the series of articles, just go to the website. It's on the main page, Catholic Relief Services, a history of lies and cover-ups. Part 1 and part 2 are linked to in this particular article. But this is a pattern. It's a pattern with CRS. They cover up whatever they do, and they lie directly about anything pertaining to formal reports about what they're doing, about their activities in foreign countries that are really egregiously offensive, just horribly immoral. But that's what they do. In any event, so that sums up the Lepanto Institute today. I know that we ran longer than usual, but that's because I had this half-hour interview that I wanted to show you, and I wanted to fill it up and make it worth your while so that you had time to watch. But here we go. That's the end of the show for tonight. Why don't we go ahead and close with our prayer? In nomine Patris, et Filii, et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum. Benedicta tu in mulieribus, et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus. Sancta Maria Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostrae. Amen. Our Lady of Victory, pray for us. In nomine Patris, et Filii, et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. God bless you all. Have a great weekend,